Hey guys, Mike here from the Homestead. In this video, I want to share with you everything that we've learned on how to protect chickens from aerial predators such as hawks and owls. We've been pasture-raising egg layers on our homestead since 2021, and we've lost several birds throughout the years, mostly to hawks, one to a raccoon, but mostly aerial predators, especially hawks, are the primary issue here where we live in central North Georgia. The first hawk attack we witnessed just a few days after we moved our White Leghorn pullets from the brooder onto pasture to the coop, and the hawk, came down just a few feet next to us and almost killed the bird. Fortunately, we were close enough that we could, shush him away, and the bird was unharmed, fortunately. But that really made us think about, or decided we had to do something. There was no way we wanted to lose birds, especially it was our very first flock, so we were kind of, emotionally attached to the birds, and, there was much more emotion involved than it is now. If we lose a bird now, it's much less of an issue than it was with our very first flock. That led us down to, doing research, talking to farmers, talking to other homesteaders, and trying a lot of things out to see what would be effective in preventing those hawk attacks in the future. Off the bat, I want to, tell you one thing. The only surefire way to protect your chickens from aerial predators is to lock them up. Lock them up. That's it if you want to make sure you won't lose a bird to an aerial predator. Now, for us, that wasn't an option because we envisioned our flock being pasture-raised, roaming in our backyard, We wanted to see them when we walked out on the porch, scratching and foraging and doing all the things that chickens do. That was in our head, our idea of how we wanted to raise our birds. And so locking them up or cooping them up was not an option for us. But since then, we've actually learned that you can lock up your birds and still raise them on pasture. And you do that by simply having a mobile chicken tractor, without a floor, that you can move to a fresh patch of pasture every day, giving your birds, access to that pasture. They can scratch, they can forage, they can eat bugs, they can eat, whatever is growing, grass or clover or what have you, and be protected at the same time. And that's something that we have not implemented yet for various reasons, but that we will likely implement going forward once we move to our new property and have a larger area to deal with, just have a chicken tractor. The downside, of course, to that approach is that you are somewhat limited to how many birds you can keep in one tractor, because the tractor needs to be small enough that you can pull it. It cannot be so heavy that, you need machinery. I mean, unless you want to, break out the tractor every day to move your birds. But practically speaking, that's probably not a good idea. So depending on the number of birds you have, you might need multiple tractors. Not a problem. They are not difficult to build. We have the one from Suscovich, that works very well. We use it for our meat birds, and then also next year we have also used it this year as an outdoor brooder. So to move our birds quicker from the brooder to pasture by leveraging that tractor and just move it every day. It's very simple, very convenient, and it keeps your birds protected. So that's the number one advice. But if you say, what, this is not for me, we really like them to roam freely in our backyard, we want to watch them do their thing, and it's just that idyllic picture that you might have in your head that you want to implement, there are a couple of other things you can do. So in the next 8 tips, most of which we've tried, except the first one, can significantly reduce your chances of aerial predators, but they likely are not going to be bulletproof. And the one is, and this might sound a little, funny if you're just trying to raise, 4 chickens as kind of pets or whatever. But if you have a flock size of several hundred birds, so large flocks, that makes it much less likely for predators to attack because they get intimidated by the huge flock size. If you have only, anything smaller, even 50 birds, right now we have 51 birds, that's way too small. An attacker doesn't care. They don't get intimidated by, a couple of chickens. But a very large flock size can not only significantly reduce the chance of attacks, but also if you lose 1 or 2, in the grander scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter because you have so many birds. So that's, tip number 1, which might not be applicable for many. I understand. And so the next one is the one that we actually chose, and that was adding overhead netting. And you can use regular bird netting, or there are actually special, more resilient and tougher hawk stopper nets. We found one on Amazon. I'm gonna link it down in the description. That's the one. We actually used a combination of the hawk stopper net as well as bird netting, and we just covered the entire area where around the coop where our chickens had access to. The problem was that area was kind of tucked in the corner, and so it worked very well in winter where there was no grass growing, there was no pasture, so we could cover, the bare spot around the coop, not a problem. But in summer, when we let them out on the grass, they were still under, in an area that was not protected by the net. But we've never had any losses with the netting. Now, of course, with the netting, you have to consider a couple of things. There are downsides to that. One is, depending on the size of the mesh, smaller hawks, there are very tiny hawks out there that can actually go through that netting. They are very acrobatic flyers, as I'm sure you know, and they might actually get through the netting. Now, that's where the bird netting can, be an advantage because it has a very fine mesh and nobody's gonna get through there. The downside of that approach is that, nothing gets through. So that means any leaves and pine cones and branches that come down, they're gonna be stuck on the net, and you have to clean it off periodically, especially, in fall then. And so what that means is if you have, a coverage, if you cannot access the middle of the netting because you have seamless coverage, it's a pain in the butt to get that stuff off. You kind of have to push it up and push it to the side, until everything rolls to the side where you can then push it over the netting on the other side, over the fence maybe. And it's a pain. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to remove the netting, because it was at the end of the day a maintenance issue, and plus it doesn't really look good. It looks kind of crappy, and we didn't want that. And so we removed the netting ultimately, but while it was there, it was effective, and the only thing that I should say is you want to make sure that you meet that netting with fencing, because otherwise, if there is, in the beginning we had the netting and it didn't go all the way to the fence line. So it was maybe 3 feet or so. It ended 3 feet before we had the perimeter fence. And so what hawks would do is they would hop on the fence or land on the fence and then simply hop down and be underneath the netting. So you have to actually get your netting all the way to the fence line and attach it there to have really, seamless coverage. And in the end of the day, what you're doing is you're locking them up, right? Just in a larger area, but it's still they're locked up, which goes back to my first point. If you do that, you significantly reduce your chances of losses. The third tip that we just implemented a few weeks ago is getting one of those fly puppet dancers. Those, it look like a scarecrow, but there's a fan, and they blow in the wind and move erratically because of the airflow. And so that can keep wildlife away, especially the type of wildlife that is not used to that. Now, the problem, there are a couple of issues associated with that. We have our backyard, where the chickens are at least, is maybe half an acre. And so obviously that one fly puppet dancer cannot cover the entire area. So depending on how large the paddock is or the area is where you let your chickens roam, you might need more than one. And, of course, those things consume electricity. You have to plug them in and let them run, during daylight hours. Typically at night, our chickens are locked up, so there's no issue. But during the day, they have to run, they consume electricity, you might need more than one. And the other thing is we've noticed both of our German Shepherd, which in the beginning viciously tried to attack this thing because it looked like an intruder. And, he was just responding to how he should, if something unusual, pops up. He got used to it. We told him, leave it, and he left it, and he's now fine with it. Our chickens and our geese also seem to have gotten used to it because they just move around this thing as if it's not even there. So if our animals get used to this, I suspect wild animals might get used to that as well. Now, the advantage is that hawks and some of the other aerial predators or flying predators are very often migratory birds, so they don't always hunt in the same territory, so they might not get used to this thing as quickly as maybe our chickens. So that might buy you more time, but ultimately I suspect that if a hawk is around in the area for longer, they might get used to that at all, and it might lose its effectiveness. But we shall see. We don't know yet. We've just had it a couple of weeks so far. We've not had any hawks. But, even before the fly puppet dancer, there were times where we didn't have any hawks in months, and suddenly they were there again and, tried to attack every single day. Number 4, getting a rooster. That's what we did unintentionally, really. We didn't want to get a rooster, but one of the hens turned out to be one, so we had to rename her from Rosie to Cacique. And he was fairly effective at alarming the flock of potential attacks and of, flying predators, but he couldn't prevent all of our losses. In other words, if there was a hen far away from the flock, and she got attacked, the rooster would then alarm and protect the rest of the flock, but wouldn't care about that one loss. So, and sometimes, when a hawk comes down, especially if it's a big hawk, those birds are almost dead on impact. It only takes seconds, and depending on how far away the rooster is, they might not be close enough to make a difference. It might scare the hawk away then, but if the chicken's already dead, it's already dead, and it doesn't really make a difference. So roosters are good deterrents. They are good to alarm the flock, but they are not bulletproof either. Same with a guard goose. We have 2 geese actually that we purchased or added to our homestead for exactly that reason, to keep an eye in the sky or eye on the sky and alert the flock. And they've been doing a fairly good job at, whenever they see something, they spread their wings, they start honking, they start running. They are, impressive birds that I'm sure scare away attackers, but they are not the ones getting into a fight. The rooster would actually get into a fight with a hawk, and he actually got his earlobe ripped off in one of those fights. A goose is not gonna attack. They might, pretend like they're attacking and like posture, but, when the shit hits the fan, they take off, and because they don't want to get hurt either. And also, we've noticed that the alarm call of the rooster is more effective than the alarm call of the geese. So in other words, when the rooster makes the funny noise, everyone runs. When the geese make their alarm call or do their alarm call, some run, others don't care. So I don't know if that's just us, but a guard goose I think is great, or guard geese. Don't have too many, because if you have a whole flock of geese, they probably just do their own thing and don't care about their chickens. But we raised those 2 geese with our new flock, and they seem to be all well integrated and moved together as one big flock, but it's still not 100% bulletproof. Providing sufficient cover, tip number 6. That's really, one of the most important things is, to have something or someone to alert the birds, but then provide them with cover, with shelter that they can access very quickly. So we let a lot of brush and bushes grow all around, and we are even in the process of building some makeshift shelters that we can strategically place throughout the chicken yard, so that there is always cover within a few feet of where the chickens are. And that's, I think, one of the most important aspects, so that when the geese or the rooster, sound the alarm, they have somewhere to go out of the way, and they're not exposed anymore. So that's really one thing. Again, it's not going to be bulletproof, because sometimes those hawks are sneaky and quicker than, the hens getting out of the way. But that's really one of the, everything else being equal, it significantly improves the chances of survival. Number 7, getting a livestock guardian dog. We've been thinking about that, and we'll probably ultimately will get one, but based on the discussions I've had and the feedback I've received from farmers who use livestock guardian dogs, they are much more effective against land-based predators than they are against aerial predators. And I suspect that's because if a coyote comes around, the dog can smell the coyote, or hear it, see it, whatever. The dog is likely not gonna see the hawk, probably not gonna smell it, until the hawk is, on top of the chicken. And then it might be too late. Yes, the hawk might fly away when the dog approaches, but it might be too late to save the either injured or already killed, chicken. So I don't think it's 100, bulletproof approach either to have dogs protect your chickens, at least not from aerial predators, but it's probably going to increase or decrease the likelihood of kills, much like all of the other tips that I have mentioned. Number 8 might sound completely counterintuitive, but it is inviting barn owls to move in. And you might think that's stupid because barn owls also kill chickens. Yes, but the thing is, most owl types, especially the barn owls, they are predominantly nocturnal. So they hunt at night. And so if your chickens are locked up at night and only are out during the day, then an attack from a barn owl is probably not very likely. But on the flip side, barn owls hunt and kill hawks. So if hawks are your main issue, like in our case here, having a couple of barn owls around by, installing, nesting boxes for them and kind of encouraging them to move in, you might actually get your hawk issue figured out without necessarily increasing the risk of kills from those barn owls, which hunt predominantly at night. So that's another way that I've seen many homesteaders do that have realized that eradication isn't really an option. You cannot kill, and you're not allowed to anyway. But even if you were allowed, killing every hawk that you see is probably not going to be feasible or helpful, because whenever you remove one type of predator, something else moves in and takes its place, and it's not always better. In most cases, it's not. I mean, just by eradicating, all the wolves from the East Coast, now we have a ton of coyotes suddenly, so not a good thing to try to remove or eradicate a predator. Instead of, try to keep the balance by having enough of predators that kill the predator that you are concerned about. Now, with the 8 tips out of the way that can help, in my opinion, to significantly reduce your risks of having your chickens killed by aerial or flying predators, let's talk about some of those deterrents that I don't think are gonna work, but that I've heard a lot people use or try to use, and usually without success. One is hanging shiny objects around your chicken yard, like, old CDs and stuff like this, or reflective tape, with the idea that the reflection, confuses or deters the hawks. I've not seen that to be very effective, and plus, I don't really like, I wouldn't want to look at my backyard and see a bunch of, old CDs flopping around in the wind. I just don't. I don't like that. Number 2, a scarecrow or an owl decoy. We have an owl decoy that we move around every so often, so it kind of make it look like it's not, so hawks don't get used to it, don't think it's a decoy. Has not been effective. We've had hawk attacks despite the owl decoy sitting right next door, and so I don't think that's very effective. Anything that's stationary, that doesn't move at all, even if you move it every so often, I don't think is very effective, because the birds, meaning hawks, get used to it, much like your own animals do as well. Adding a black chicken to the flock. We have 4 black chickens in our latest flock, and from that flock, 3 of our non-black birds got killed. So just by adding black birds to the flock, I don't think it does anything, at least not in our case. So far, none of the black birds have been killed. So maybe there is an argument to be made that if you have only black chickens, that hawks don't attack those black birds, maybe because they think they are crows. And, crows and hawks don't get along, as I'm sure you've seen, where a lot of crows or blackbirds chase hawks away. I don't know, but just adding them to the flock, I don't think is effective at all. Raising larger breeds. I used to think that, with some of the bigger breeds, there is no way a hawk can, at least the smaller hawks in our area can carry away those larger birds. Well, the hawks don't care about what I thought. I never did. And the thing is, hawks typically don't carry away those birds or your chickens. They eat them, or as much as they can, on the spot. So it's the size of the bird, at least as far as chickens are concerned, I don't think really makes a difference. We've had large hens, like our cinnamon queens, get killed, and we have smaller birds, like the leghorns, get killed. Maybe one could argue that the size of a goose, of a very large duck, maybe they are less susceptible, because at the end of the day, all predators are opportunistic. They go for the easy kill, and so the goal with everything that you do is to raise the bar just enough so that the predator goes somewhere else. Maybe goes after the bunny or the squirrel or the whatever, but not after your birds. That's really the only thing you can do besides, locking them up. But large breeds, I don't think really makes a difference, hasn't made a difference for us. Other thing you should really consider is, and that I encourage you to consider, is that losses are a normal part of raising livestock. There is no way around. Sometimes animals get sick, they get killed, maybe at one point you run one over with a tractor, you step on a little chick or whatever, It is just part of raising animals, and it's part of the cycle of life at the end of the day. Of course, if you're raising, it also depends on why you're raising chickens. If they're your pet animals, if you raise like 4 chickens as pets, and you cuddle with them every day, and then 2 of them get killed, it's very tragic. I understand that. We've been there. But if you have 50, in our case 50 birds, or if you have hundreds of birds, they are not your pets. They are livestock, and if one gets killed, so be it. Makes good compost. Maybe depending on how the bird got killed, maybe might even end up in the soup and feed your family. So just consider that they are not necessarily pets. If you want them to be pets, I highly encourage you just lock them up, keep them in a coop, maybe in a mobile tractor where they can have access to pasture. They're gonna be safe. You're gonna be happy with them for a long time, and they're gonna be happy likely that they don't have to worry about anything killing them, and everything is good. But if it's livestock, you can still do the mobile approach and keep them protected. But in our case, what we've decided ultimately, after everything that we've tried, we just do our best. We try to raise the bar as much as we can, but if we have losses, we have losses. Every 2 years we get, at least every 2 years we get a new, batch anyway from the hatchery, or we, let them raise their own chicks. And so, we get new ones in, and some of the old ones die. And even, whoever doesn't or didn't get killed, at some point, we will, process them and harvest them once they stop laying. So, it's easier, I think, to get used to it and understand that this is a part of life. Now, a couple of frequently asked questions maybe before we wrap it up here, that I've heard and that I've asked myself is, one, can you, kill hawks when they attack your chickens? So even if you have a hawk that wiped out your entire flock, now you're unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you want to see it, not allowed to harm or kill that bird. They are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So it's a federal offense if you do that. I recommend not doing it for that reason, but also because just killing one hawk, doesn't mean there's not going to be the next one. There will be a next one, and if it's not a hawk, it's something else. So eradication doesn't work. And again, it's against the law. Is hawk netting effective in protecting chickens? I think it's one of the most effective ways to cover them, to prevent, to put in a physical layer, physical barrier basically between the hawk and your chickens. Just make sure it's closed up everywhere. There are no open spots where a hawk could swoop in, either underneath or having mesh wire that's so big where hawks can potentially swoop through. But if you have it done, if done right, netting is highly effective. There are just some downsides to it, like I've mentioned before. And yeah, that's really it. With that, we're gonna wrap it up. I hope you like this video. I'd like to hear from you all. What are you doing to keep your chickens safe and protected from aerial predators, or do you just live with the losses? Let us know in the comments, and I'll hope we see you in the next video.